Welcome to the Menga podcast, your ultimate dose of vulnerability.
Sounds kind of dangerous, doesn't it?
I guess it does when you put it like that.
Yeah.
But hey, knowledge is power, right?
Right.
And today we're taking a deep dive into the world of cybersecurity, specifically a system called Netbrick's Usercube.
Usercube.
Yeah, you've shared some fascinating research with me about vulnerabilities in this system.
Oh, yeah?
And we're here to break it all down for our listeners.
Awesome.
So, for those who might not be familiar, what exactly is Usercube?
Well, imagine like a digital bouncer.
Okay, I like where this is going.
Yeah, a bouncer for all your company's data.
Okay.
Controlling who has access to what, keeping the important stuff safe.
Right, so it's all about security.
Exactly. It's about identity governance and administration, or IGA for short.
IGA, okay.
Making sure only the right people can access sensitive information.
So Usercube is like the gatekeeper of the digital kingdom.
Perfect analogy.
But it sounds like maybe this gatekeeper left a few side doors unlocked?
Unfortunately, yeah. There are several vulnerabilities that have been discovered in Usercube, but let's start with one that really stood out to me when I was doing my research.
Okay, lay on me.
It's CVE 2023 41264.
CVE 2023-41264.
Catchy name, huh?
Rolls right off the tongue.
Well, this one impacts Usercube versions before 6.0.215.
Okay.
So it's important to understand what it is and how it could be exploited.
All right, let's break down this CVE 2023-41264.
Okay.
What kind of vulnerability are we talking about here?
It's called an authentication bypass vulnerability.
Authentication bypass meaning?
It allows someone to basically slip past those security checks.
Oh, no.
And gain unauthorized access to the system, kind of like, sneaking into a concert without a ticket.
Oh, so a digital backdoor into all your precious data.
Pretty much, yeah.
That sounds pretty alarming.
Yeah.
How does it actually work? Like, what's the mechanism?
Okay, so this particular vulnerability, it gets a bit technical, but I'll try to explain it simply.
Please do.
Imagine Usercube uses a secret handshake to verify authorized requests.
Okay.
But in some installations, two crucial parts of this handshake, something called restsettings.authorized client hide and restsettings.authorized secret, are missing.
So it's like the bouncer forgetting to ask for ID.
Yeah, exactly. And because of this missing handshake, attackers can craft these special messages.
Okay.
Called HTTP requests.
HTTP, like what would I type in to visit a website?
Similar, yeah.
Yeah.
It's basically how computers talk to each other over the internet.
Okay, got it.
So they slip these requests in and can actually extract sensitive configuration data from Usercube because there's no security check in place.
Okay, so they get past that first layer of security.
Right.
But what can they actually do with this stolen data?
Well, that's when things get even more interesting. Reports indicate they can then manipulate certain elements within Usercube, specifically opened client.
Okay.
Think of it like finding a master key, right?
A skeleton key.
Yeah. It lets them modify a really important piece of info called the application name.
Oh, okay.
And doing this essentially grants them administrative access.
Wait, so they go from sneaking in to being in control.
Pretty much, yeah.
That can't be good.
It's definitely not good. With that level of access, they can execute malicious code, potentially causing chaos for the whole organization.
Wow. Okay, so we've established this CVE 2023-41264 is a big problem.
Definitely.
Before we get into the other vulnerabilities you found, let's talk about the impact.
Okay.
Why should our listeners care about this? What's the worst that could happen?
Well, we could be talking about serious data breaches.
Okay.
Sensitive information like credit card numbers,
Oh, no.
confidential company documents, even personal health records being stolen.
A cybersecurity nightmare.
Absolutely a nightmare. And it's not just data theft. Attackers could compromise the entire system, basically hold it hostage until a ransom is paid.
Oh, man.
Imagine your whole company's operations just coming to a halt.
And your reputation, too.
Oh, yeah, the reputational damage would be huge.
That's rough. Okay, so we've got data breaches, system compromise, but I remember you mentioning something about attackers being able to add users and manipulate existing profiles.
Yep. Right.
Can you break that down for me? Like, what does that look like and what does it mean for someone's data?
Okay, so let's say a company uses Usercube to manage access to their financial systems, right?
Okay, yeah.
An attacker, taking advantage of this vulnerability, could create a whole new user account, give them full admin privileges, and basically give themselves free reign over sensitive financial data.
Oh, wow.
Or they could target an existing employee's account, someone in accounting maybe, and elevate their permissions. So they could transfer funds, manipulate financial records.
Without anyone noticing.
Exactly, yeah.
That's terrifying. It's like someone just like forging an employee badge and walking right into the vault.
That's a great analogy. And what's really scary is this type of activity could go unnoticed for a long time.
Oh, no.
So they have plenty of time to inflict some serious damage before anyone even realizes what's happening.
Okay, so CVE 2023-41264 is definitely bad news.
Yes.
But you mentioned there are even more vulnerabilities. What else did your research turn up?
Yeah, unfortunately, there's more. Researchers also found a hard-coded secret.
A hard-coded secret, meaning?
Like a backdoor password, essentially, embedded in the application's libraries.
Oh, no.
And here's the thing. It's the same for all Usercube customers.
What?
So if an attacker cracks this code...
It's like a skeleton key that opens every door in the city.
Oh, exactly. They could compromise a massive number of organizations.
That's a huge problem.
It is, yeah. And on top of that, there's another vulnerability related to what's called the external cookie.
The external cookie. Like the things websites use to remember who you are.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You know how sometimes you don't have to log in every time you visit a website?
Oh, yeah, I've seen those.
Well, this external cookie is used for single sign-on in Usercube.
Okay.
And it has an unusually long lifespan.
So even if they can't get that master skeleton key, they could steal someone's cookie and just impersonate them for ages.
Precisely, yeah.
Not good.
Not good at all. And because it's tied to single sign-on, they could access multiple systems with just that one stolen cookie.
Oh, man. That makes the risks associated with Usercube even more, serious?
Definitely more severe.
Yeah.
More ways to gain access and stay under the radar for longer.
Okay, so seems like Usercube has its fair share of security challenges.
Definitely does.
But I imagine there are ways to address these vulnerabilities.
There are, yeah.
What can organizations do to protect themselves?
Well, the most important thing is to update Usercube to version 6.0.215 or later.
Okay, so step 1, update.
Absolutely. This update includes patches that address the vulnerabilities we've been discussing.
Okay, so make sure your software is up to date.
Right. In addition to updating, organizations need to make sure that those security fields we talked about, the restsettings.authorized cliented and the restsettings.authorized secret, are configured properly.
Right. Don't forget to tell the bouncer the password.
Exactly.
Anything else?
And staying vigilant about security in general is super important. Cybersecurity is an ongoing thing, right?
Yeah, for sure.
New vulnerabilities are discovered all the time. Regularly patching and updating all software, not just Usercube, is crucial to minimizing the risk.
So, update, configure, and stay vigilant.
You got it.
What about for our listeners who aren't, cybersecurity experts?
Right.
What can they do to protect themselves online?
I'd say a good place to start is being aware of the systems that manage your access, both at work and for personal accounts.
Okay.
Understand what systems are controlling who has access to your data.
So, know who's managing my digital identity, so to speak.
Exactly. Knowing what's out there and how it works is the first step towards protecting yourself online.
Yeah, this deep dive has definitely opened my eyes to the complexity of cybersecurity.
Definitely.
It's easy to just take these systems for granted, but knowing how vulnerable they can be definitely makes you think twice.
For sure.
But before we move on, I want to really dig into those other vulnerabilities we talked about, especially that hard-coded secret.
Oh, yeah.
That sounds like a ticking time bomb.
It's a big concern for sure. And, it really highlights how important proper configuration and security hygiene are. It's not just about installing software. You've got to understand its settings and make sure they align with your organization's security policies.
So it's not just a set it and forget it kind of thing.
Definitely not. And the fact that a hard-coded secret was found embedded in the libraries,
it's like hiding a spare key under the welcome mat.
Yeah, not a great strategy. And then that external cookie thing adds another layer of complexity,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems like it's this constant push and pull between convenience,
Right.
like single sign-on, and security.
Yeah, for sure.
So it's a balancing act, right?
It is. It is. Organizations are constantly grappling with that. You want things to be easy for users, but not at the expense of security.
Right, right.
That's why it's so important to have this layered approach to security with multiple safeguards in place.
So not putting all your eggs in one basket.
Exactly. And making sure the people managing those safeguards are well-trained and have the right tools for the job.
Makes sense.
Yeah.
You mentioned it has an unusually long lifespan.
Yes.
Why is that a problem? What can attackers actually do with it?
So think of a cookie like a temporary ID card that a website gives you so it can recognize you on your next visit.
Okay,
The longer this ID card is valid, the higher the risk if it falls into the wrong hands.
makes sense.
In this case, if an attacker gets a hold of your external cookie, they can impersonate you on the system for a long time, potentially gaining access to sensitive data,
Oh, wow.
or even doing things on your behalf.
It's like someone stealing your driver's license and using it to, like, impersonate you for weeks or even months.
Yeah, exactly. A really long time to be walking around with someone else's identity.
That is not a good situation.
Not at all. And because it's tied to single sign-on, the attacker could access multiple systems with that one stolen cookie.
Oh, man. That's not good.
So it really highlights the need for organizations to regularly review and adjust the lifespan of their cookies.
Yeah.
Shorter lifespans, while maybe a little less convenient for users, can seriously reduce the window of opportunity for attackers.
Right. Finding that balance again between security and convenience.
Always a balance.
Now, I'm curious, how are these vulnerabilities even discovered in the first place?
Right. Well, it's often security researchers who uncover these things.
Okay.
They, dive deep into the code, test different scenarios, look for weaknesses.
Okay.
In this case, the researchers who found these Usercube vulnerabilities practiced what's called responsible disclosure.
Responsible disclosure, meaning?
They inform the company, Netrix in this case, about the problems.
Okay.
Give them time to develop and release patches before making the vulnerabilities public knowledge.
Oh, that's good. So they give the good guys a head start to fix the problems.
Yeah, exactly.
Before the bad guys can exploit them.
Right. Responsible disclosure is crucial in cybersecurity.
Yeah.
It helps minimize the damage and gives vendors a chance to fix the flaws before they're widely exploited.
Sounds like a really important process.
Very important. It's this collaboration that's so vital to keeping our digital world safe.
I'm also wondering what all this means for the average person.
Yeah.
Like if I'm listening to this, what are my takeaways? What can I do to protect myself?
Well, being aware of these vulnerabilities is a fantastic first step.
Okay.
Understanding that these systems exist and can be compromised is key.
Right.
So think about the systems you use every day, especially ones that require you to log in,
Yeah.
and make sure you're using those strong, unique passwords for each one.
Unique passwords, got it.
Yeah. It's also a good idea to enable two-factor authentication whenever you can.
Okay, two-factor.
Definitely.
So being mindful of our digital footprint and just taking those basic security precautions can really make a difference.
Absolutely, yeah. And staying informed about cybersecurity news, that can help you understand what's happening out there, those evolving threats, and make better decisions about your online security.
That's great advice. You mentioned earlier that cybersecurity is a shared responsibility.
Yeah.
What does that look like in practice? Like, how do we all share that responsibility?
It means that everyone, from individual users to organizations to the developers creating the software, we all have a role to play.
Okay.
Individuals need to practice good security hygiene. Organizations need to implement solid security policies and invest in security training. And developers, they need to prioritize security right from the start in that software development lifecycle.
Sounds like a team effort.
Absolutely a team effort. Security isn't just about technology.
Right.
It's about people, about processes, and about awareness.
Yeah. If we all work together, we could hopefully create a more secure digital world.
Sure.
It's a great note to end on. But before we go, I want to touch on something you said earlier about the always evolving nature of cyber threats. Can you talk more about that? Like, what does the future of cybersecurity look like?
Well, cybersecurity is this constantly moving target, right? As technology advances, so do the tactics of cyber criminals. We're seeing these really sophisticated attacks nowadays, with attackers constantly finding new ways to exploit vulnerabilities.
Okay.
And attacks targeting these identity and access management systems.
Like Usercube.
Exactly. Those are becoming more common because attackers are realizing that compromising those systems gives them access to a ton of sensitive data.
Right. So it's almost like an arms race then.
It is.
Between the good guys and the bad guys,
Yeah.
where the battleground is constantly shifting.
That's a perfect analogy. As new technologies emerge, like AI, Internet of Things, all that, new vulnerabilities are bound to pop up, creating more opportunities for attackers.
So it sounds like it's a constant battle.
It is.
Are we destined to just be like forever fighting off cyber attacks?
Well, it's not about being pessimistic, right? It's about recognizing that cybersecurity is an ongoing journey.
Okay.
It's not a destination. We need to stay ahead of the curve, invest in research, develop innovative solutions, and, really promote that culture of security awareness.
So learn from these vulnerabilities like
Yeah.
the ones in Usercube and just constantly be adapting our strategy.
Yeah. Exactly. By staying informed, being proactive, and working together, we can mitigate those risks and hopefully build a safer digital future.
That is an encouraging thought. Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive.
We have.
Explored the technical bits of the Usercube vulnerabilities,
Yeah.
their potential impact, and what organizations and individuals can do to protect themselves, and even touched on the future of cybersecurity.
It's been quite a journey.
It really has. Before we say goodbye, is there any, final message you'd like to leave our listeners with?
I think the most important thing to remember is that you have the power to make a difference. Even those small actions, choosing strong passwords, being careful what you click on, those things can all contribute to a safer digital world.
Yeah, little things add up.
They really do.
Wow.
Stay informed, stay vigilant, and never underestimate how important cybersecurity is.
That's fantastic advice. Thank you so much for joining us and sharing your expertise on such a crucial topic.
It was my pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in to The Deep Dive. Before we go, I just want to reiterate,
Remember, everyone,
security is a journey.
not a destination.
Stay curious out there.
And stay safe.
We'll be back soon with part 2 of this deep dive into the Usercube vulnerabilities. Until then, stay safe online.
Anyone who knows the secret can basically get into systems that are, protected by Usercube.
Right.
It's like, as we said, that master key, unlocks every door in the building.
Yeah.
And that's why this vulnerability, it affects all Usercube customers,
Right.
not just, a handful.
So this is a big deal.
A big deal.
What can be done about it, though? Is there any way to mitigate this risk?
Fortunately, there is. Updating to version 6.0.215 or later, that gets rid of this hard-coded secret.
Right.
Netrix, the company behind Usercube, they addressed it in their update, which is why keeping your software up to date is so, so important.
Okay, that makes sense. So updates are key. Let's move on to that external cookie vulnerability we were talking about. You mentioned it has a really long lifespan, right?
Yes.
Why is that a problem? What can attackers actually do with it?
Think of a cookie like a temporary ID card, right?
Okay.
A website gives it to you so it can recognize you when you come back. The longer that ID card is valid, the more risky it is if it ends up in the wrong hands.
Right.
So in this case, if an attacker gets your external cookie, they can basically pretend to be you on the system
Oh, no.
for quite a while, potentially getting access to your data or even doing things as you.
So it's like if someone stole your driver's license and used it to impersonate you, but for weeks or months.
Yeah, exactly. It's a really long time for someone to be walking around with your identity.
Not good at all.
Not good. And because it's connected to that single sign-on,
Yeah.
the attacker could access multiple systems with that one stolen cookie.
Oh, man. So the external cookie really does add another layer of complexity to this whole thing.
It does. It really highlights the need for organizations to regularly check and adjust how long their cookies last.
Okay.
Shorter lifespans might be a little inconvenient for users, but it can significantly cut down the chances for an attacker.
So again, it's that trade-off between security and convenience. Now, backing up a bit, I'm really curious about how these vulnerabilities are discovered in the first place.
It's a good question. It's often security researchers who are the ones finding these things.
Okay.
They're like detectives, really. They dig into the code, test different scenarios, just looking for weak spots.
Like poking and prodding.
Exactly. And in this case, the researchers who found these Usercube vulnerabilities, they did something called responsible disclosure.
Responsible disclosure. What does that mean?
It means they told the company, Netrix, about the problems.
Okay.
But they gave them time to fix it, develop and release patches before going public with the information.
So it's they're giving the good guys a head start to fix the problem before the bad guys can use it, right?
Right. Yeah, exactly. Responsible disclosure is really important in the cybersecurity world.
I can see why.
It really helps minimize the potential damage and gives the software vendors a chance to address those security flaws
Yeah.
before they're out there in the wild.
So it's this delicate dance between, revealing the problems
Right.
and protecting users.
Absolutely, yeah.
I'm also wondering what all of this means for, the average person.
Right.
If I'm listening to this, What are my takeaways? What can I do to protect myself?
Being aware of these vulnerabilities is a huge first step. Just understanding that these systems exist and that they can be compromised, that's key.
Yeah.
So, think about the systems you use every day, especially the ones that require you to log in, and make sure you're using strong and unique passwords.
Okay, unique passwords for everything. Got it.
Exactly. And enable that two-factor authentication whenever you can.
Okay, two-factor.
So being mindful of your digital footprint and just taking those basic security precautions,
Yeah.
those really can make a big difference.
Little things add up.
Yeah,
Now, you mentioned earlier that cybersecurity is kind of a shared responsibility, right?
it is.
What does that look like in practice? How do we all share that responsibility?
It means that everyone has a part to play, from everyday users like us to organizations to the developers who are actually creating the software.
Okay, so everyone's involved.
Everyone. Individuals need to practice good security hygiene, so strong passwords, being careful what you click on.
Right.
Organizations need to have solid security policies and invest in training for their employees.
Okay.
And developers need to make security a top priority from the very beginning, when they're designing and building software.
So it's a team effort to build a secure digital environment.
It really is. Security isn't just about technology. It's about people, processes, and just being aware.
And that's how, hopefully, we can create a more resilient digital world.
Right.
That's a great message. Before we wrap up, I want to go back to something you said earlier about cyber threats always evolving.
Oh, yeah.
Can you elaborate on that a bit more? Like, what does the future of cybersecurity look like?
Well, cybersecurity is constantly changing. As technology changes and gets more advanced, so do the tactics that cybercriminals use. We're seeing much more sophisticated attacks these days, with attackers always finding new ways to exploit those weaknesses.
Okay. Yeah.
And attacks that target these identity and access management systems.
Like Usercube.
Yeah, exactly. Those are becoming way more common, because attackers are realizing if they can compromise those systems, they can get their hands on a ton of sensitive data.
So it's like almost an arms race between like the good guys and the bad guys.
It is an arms race where the battlefield is constantly shifting.
Okay, so what does this all mean for the future? Are we just like going to be constantly fighting off these attacks?
I think it's about not being pessimistic about it.
Okay.
It's about understanding that cybersecurity is this ongoing journey, not a destination you reach. We need to stay ahead of the curve, investing in research, coming up with innovative solutions, and really fostering that culture of security awareness.
So we learn from the vulnerabilities like the ones in Usercube, and we adapt our strategies.
Exactly. By staying informed, being proactive, and working together, we can mitigate those risks and create a safer digital future.
That's a much more positive way to look at it.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've covered a lot in this deep dive. We talked about the nitty-gritty details of the Usercube vulnerabilities,
Right.
their potential impact, and what organizations and individuals can do to protect themselves. We even touched on the future of cybersecurity.
It's been quite the journey.
It really has. Before we say goodbye, is there anything else you'd like to leave our listeners with?
Just remember that you have the power to make a difference. Even those small actions, like picking strong passwords, being mindful of what you click on, those all add up to a safer digital world for everyone. Stay informed, stay vigilant, and don't ever underestimate the importance of cybersecurity.
That is great advice. Thank you so much for being here today and sharing your expertise with us.
My pleasure.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in.